Jasmine Crockett joining the silly chorus. I mean, she's always been part of the silly chorus, and now she's filling it in with some obscenities along the way. Here she is speaking to people, most recently, shortly after the news of the strikes. She wants to know why she wasn't included. I think we know why.
I'm the one that's supposed to make a fucking decision or at least get a vote.
That's right.
You're supposed to make the what decision? Or at least get a vote? No, I don't think we're going to give you a vote, because I think if we did, that might actually kill the element of surprise. Again, so Donald Trump taking it out on Crockett as well, saying about Jasmine Crockett. I mean, like, honestly, guys, you can't make this up. If that is the best you're going to put forward, you're putting forward Jasmine Crockett and AOC on your ticket, and I'm sorry, like, it's game over. As Ken Langone, founder of Home Depot, prominent GOP Republican, said, and super capitalist, red-blooded American capitalist, just like yours truly, he's like, they keep doing this, we won't have to worry at all. They'll never be able to raise a dime, for goodness sakes. So Crockett said that, and then Donald Trump said in response that, AOC is bad. She's bad, and she's not really qualified for the office and doesn't really have the test scores to be able to be in the office. But then again, she's, quote, far more qualified than Crockett, who is a seriously low IQ individual, or Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country. Yet the failed country that she comes from doesn't have a government, is drenched in crime and poverty, and is rated one of the worst in the world. It is, if it's even rated at all. Yeah. So how dare the mouse? How dare the mouse? We assume he's talking about AOC. Is AOC the new mouse? Is that her nickname? You think that one's going to stick? The mouse in the house? How dare the mouse, she is kind of mousy, tell us how to run the United States of America? We are just now coming back from that radical left experiment with Sleepy Joe, Kamala, and the auto pen in charge. What a disaster it was. AOC should be forced to take the cognitive test that I just completed at Walter Reed Medical Center. He goes on about how well he did and says that, she'd do miserably badly at it, and Jasmine Crockett would do even worse, because you're talking about low IQ individuals. It's a sad thing. Look, somebody elected her, strangely enough, but someone elected her, and Jasmine Crockett is now sensing that she's got her 2 minutes of fame. She's going to double down on what AOC has done. It's really interesting. They're not really working together. Oh my gosh, Cat Crazy. Great to hear from you today. Cat Crazy is one of our originals here. Here almost every day, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much again for your generosity. Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy, from Ronald Reagan. If I'm looking for a great quote, I'm always looking for a great quote. And I can't get enough in terms of the Reagan quotes. Look at that. We're able to put it right up on the screen today. Pretty nice. Cat Crazy, thank you for that, because it's so true. And we're going to get to all of it, because the party's just gotten wacko. And you know what? AOC is part of the problem. And I think they're starting to realize that. So she's been humiliated by Donald Trump once again. There's not a lot of pickup on this whole impeachment thing. And you wouldn't expect that there would be, but she's going to try it anyway. Her party is going to distance themselves from this. You're already seeing examples of this. I mean, when the MSNBC host on Morning Joe is sitting there going, you can't really go out and telegraph everything ahead of time. Now, can you? When they're starting to actually make sense, that's when we need to really scratch our heads, right? They're starting to, there's one out of many over there. But I think in this case, Joe Scarborough, as much as he does lie, and I say that in terms of the lies, because we had to listen to all his rhetoric about best Joe Biden ever. And I'm sorry, any which way you slice that one, that was a lie, right? That was a lie. Best Joe Biden ever. I've known him for 50 years, and this is the best Joe Biden ever. Wow. Then you definitely didn't see him in his prime, I guess. Well, Joe Biden, we know, was really challenged from a health standpoint. And I think anybody who's had anybody suffer with that, and a lot of us have, we recognized it. And while we may not be doctors, we certainly knew the signs. And Joe Scarborough wanted to sit there and lie to your face. So you have to take everything he says with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, when Joe Scarborough is actually saying to, hey, Hakeem Jeffries, this doesn't really kind of work, what you're saying, I think they're onto something.
Well, this has been the debate. We talked about it yesterday with another member of Congress. This has been debate going back 30, 40, 50 years. Obviously, Republicans were saying this after Barack Obama attacked Libya. Republicans were saying this with Bill Clinton in the 1990s on Kosovo. But if you're going to have a surprise attack with B-2 bombers that are going to be going over to Iran, striking their nuclear facilities, do you think it's a good idea to inform 535 members of Congress before that operation takes off?
Well, the key here is what was the imminent nature of the threat that justified immediate military action and surprise military action.
Right.
If there was no
so
imminent
the United
threat,
Nations, I'm curious if you're concerned, like the United Nations, a nuclear agency, the IAEA had said that Iran had already enriched uranium up to 60%. And as you know, the jump from 60 to 100% is negligible, and had enough enriched uranium for several weapons. Would you consider that to be a considerable enough threat to strike Iran under those circumstances?
well, certainly it's a challenging situation, but one of the reasons why we need a briefing, Joe, is to have an understanding, was that enriched uranium even damaged, or was it removed by the Iranians prior to the strike? We don't know the answers to that question. It certainly is something that should be talked about, and the American people should be informed about the reality of whether it was a successful strike or not. In terms of the Iranian nuclear threat, I think we've all been clear that Iran can never be permitted to become nuclear capable. But the Constitution is not a mere inconvenience. It's the reality. And if members of the executive branch, if hawkish individuals across the country want to change things, it's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, they can put forward a constitutional amendment. But the framers of this country saw fit to vest this authority within the House and the Senate, not the executive branch.
Right. And at what point should that be triggered? Should it be triggered by every strike, like, for instance, Barack Obama in 2011 in Libya, or countless strikes by the Bush administration and the Obama administration after September the 11th? Is it every strike, or is it when you were going in, sending troops in? When do you think that action is triggered?
Seems to me, and it's a great question, Joe, that it has to relate to whether the step that was taken, one, is in response to an imminent threat to American interests, and two, whether it's an act of war. And part of the reason why, after the fact, it's important for members of Congress to be able to have a briefing with the administration that is comprehensive and that gives members the opportunity to ask questions so we can provide these answers to the American people who clearly do not want another failed, costly, deadly war in the Middle East.
You know, that was really just kind of an unbelievable exchange to watch, because when you think about historically, and Joe actually got at this, all that has happened, certainly probably since 1973, and in 1973, I think you started to see more opportunity for presidents to make these decisions. But you think about Obama with Afghanistan, Obama with Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan. We can go back to George W., right, with Afghanistan, with Iraq, or H.W. with Iraq and Panama, or you can go back to Reagan with Libya and Grenada. I mean, the reality is, if a president feels that there's an opportunity to do this, typically the president, in the interest of national security, will take those opportunities. And you don't necessarily want to be going to your 500 plus members of Congress and saying, hey, can I do this pretty please? Because then it kills the entire element of surprise. One has to wonder, if Clinton had had the opportunity to do this with North Korea way back when, would he have taken that opportunity? You would think that maybe the world would be a different, maybe safer place, right? If North Korea did not, I mean, you don't want, and this is not controversial. This is very, like, I can fully say this. And even Hakeem Jeffries, who, by the way, was informed but allegedly didn't pick up his phone. Like they tried to inform him, but he just didn't pick up his phone. Ooh, that's a good excuse, right? Sorry, I missed the call. Too busy hanging out, avoiding President Trump because I have such TDS. Anyway, he didn't pick up the call. Otherwise, he would have had some more information. But I think that you kind of have to understand the reality that sometimes in the interest of doing the best thing for the country, you're not going to be able to consult Jasmine Crockett and AOC. Something that another host on MSNBC, this one is actually Susan Page from USA Today, has very much a liberal bent, even though she's supposed to be journalism with a capital J, but she's talking to Chris Coons and she's actually admitting it too. And Senator Coons, what's he going to say? Here we go.
Lots of ifs, but if the ceasefire holds, if there's significant damage to the Iranian nuclear program, if they return to the table, does that mean that President Trump was right?
Look, I will, of course, agree that ending Iran's nuclear program would be a real positive for the region and for the United States. Exactly how he went about it, the lack of consultation with Congress, the lack of advance notice, I think was a mistake. And we don't know for sure what the real objective of the administration is. We had on the same day Vice President Vance on a Sunday show saying we are really only focused on ending the enrichment program, and then the president tweeting about maybe regime change isn't such a bad thing. I think it's important to move to diplomacy, to find a way to make the ceasefire hold and to get Israel and Iran, the United States and our European partners at the table to secure a permanent end.
Okay, so there is a difference. I just want to stress this, and Peace of My Mind actually is stressing it as well. Strategic strikes don't require consultation, prolonged military operations do. There's a difference between saying, okay, we're going into war versus we have an opportunity to do a strategic strike. And when I referenced all those president's strategic strikes, those are all examples over the last, 40 some odd years where presidents have used their executive presidential authority to be able to have these strategic strikes without risking impeachment from the likes of an AOC. But in a divided world, right? This is the only place they're going to, and they don't quite get it. I remember being really shocked on Monday morning, or maybe even Sunday morning it was, when I looked at the New York Times and I saw the New York Times had reported that this was war with Iran, that we had entered war with Iran. And that is not at all what the administration has been saying. In fact, they've been very, very clear. We're not committing to any kind of war with Iran. This was a strategic strike to take out their nuclear capabilities, period. End of story. But don't tell the Dems, right? I mean, Jamie Raskin, his tone, he's kind of caught here. And the MSNBC anchor is like, oh, but don't you agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? And somehow he boxed himself in on this one because now he's calling for impeachment too. Look, the party needs to get rid of these people. The party is not going to survive. I say this with no interest in seeing the Democrats succeed, but I'm a realist. I'm the same one who told you, you can't run Joe Biden. I told you that back in 2020, okay? For 2021, there was no way that Joe Biden was going to work as your candidate at the top of the ticket. And I told you Kamala wouldn't work either. So again, I like to see a fair fight. Thank you very much. And I think when you have a fair fight, you actually have the best interest of the country at heart. But the more you have people like this AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Jamie Raskin out there, and let's add Adam Schiff to the mix too. Where's he been lately? The more you're going to have a problem. Here's Jamie.
Force against a runaway president.
Congressman, you had Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling the president's decision to bomb Iran without authorization a grave violation of the Constitution, saying it is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment. Just real quickly, do you agree?
I couldn't read the whole thing, but it sounds like I agree with that it's an absolute violation of the Constitution.
It's the grounds for impeachment piece that I want you to weigh in on. So that right there at the end.
Well, without saying what anybody should do in any particular situation, undoubtedly a violation of the war powers of Congress, the usurpation of the war powers of Congress, would be an impeachable offense, would be a high crime and misdemeanor. I mean, Israel said we've just, in what Israel did on its own, we set them back 2 or 3 years. So that's not an emergency. Remember, the president can only assert the power to use military in a context in which there's an imminent threat to us. And that clearly wasn't there. So we can add this to a very long list of things where the president has violated the spending power. I mean, the states brought an action because the president unilaterally imposed a spending freeze on laws passed by Congress, signed by the president, for $1 trillion in spending. They wanted to hold up all of these federal public health programs, housing programs, local policing programs, just out of the blue. And where does he get the doctrine that he can just do that? He just pulls it out of a hat. Well, the court struck it down, and gratefully, the states are there. But obviously, talk of impeachment today when we're in the minority, and we can't even get Republicans to vote with us on a single bill to try to restore sanity, is somewhat hypothetical. But I'm with my friend AOC in saying we've got to keep a very strict catalog of all of the violations of the Constitution that are taking place.
Congressman Jamie Raskin,
Okay,
New Jersey.
so that's really interesting, guys. What that suggests there, as he said, it's very hypothetical, is that he knows that AOC is out over her skis too. In other words, AOC is just really carrying on and throwing this sort of hissy fit that's not practical in this moment in time. And again, like you can go through history in the last 40 years and all the times that these strikes have been undertaken, and they've been undertaken for national security reasons and not shared at the time for national security reasons. Now, if we're going to go into war, that's a whole other thing, but that's not where we're at. And Mike Johnson articulated this well as well on Fox. I want you to hear him.
It is ridiculous for anyone to assert that the commander-in-chief, using his Article 2 power under the Constitution, should have to consult all the members of Congress or even all the leadership in Congress every time he has to make a decisive, quick action. I mean, that would not be feasible. So the idea that they're saying that what he's done is somehow inappropriate or unconstitutional is nonsense. None of them ever complained when Barack Obama and Joe Biden used the same authority to drop bombs all over the Middle East, all over the world. It's entirely inconsistent with their previous actions, and I think we call them on that hypocrisy.
Right, because it's all just so freaking political, right? That's all this is. And again, let's go back to what they've been saying, which is that this is not actually war. Marco Rubio getting out and saying that. Joyce, I hear you. She's making the point that, and thank you for your generosity, can liberals spell covert ops or strategy or even the element of surprise? I think not. I mean, you just, it couldn't have worked that way, right? They would have most definitely moved all the uranium really quickly. And here's Rubio saying it's not war.
This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the president of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do for, their own public relations purposes. But the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime in Iran.
So again, that was from Sunday, from Maria Bartiromo's Sunday show, my former colleague there at Fox. And he was refuting the headline that you saw in the New York Times suggesting that we're at war. In other words, we're not. And so I think that also provides more wiggle room in terms of the Constitution, which is why, look, she is just way out over her skis. Now, what else will they try to do? They could try and say, well, it was faulty intelligence. That's one of the things that you heard from Jamie Raskin. It's one of the things that you heard from Hakeem Jeffries. And interestingly, it's one of the things that we keep hearing from the mainstream media, including CBS News, which is dealing with its own struggles. Do not forget CBS News, which may have to pay up to $50 million to the president to settle its lawsuit which, by the way, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't on that one. We've talked about that one at length, but Paramount as a company wants to get a deal done with Larry Ellison's son, Skydance Media, and the FCC could hold it up. So if they pay the fine, it looks like they're doing it just because they want the deal to go through, but if they don't pay the fine, well, the company's not going to get sold to Skydance, and CBS is going to die a slow death, shall we say. This reporter on CBS News, Face the Nation, really took one Marco Rubio to task, trying to articulate this idea that, you know what, we don't have any intelligence that they have a weapon. And the problem with that, and I'll let Marco explain it. Wow, he really lapped the floor with her. I mean, just woo, boom, shot her right down. Do you want to do my job? Are you suddenly the Secretary of State? What intelligence do you have? His point was, we have a lot of intelligence that shows us that the uranium is there and they're working on it. Therefore, if we have an opportunity to take them out, and we did, right? Because think about Israel having cleared effectively the airways for us so they had no way to shoot us down. We have this open opportunity. Why would we not take this? Yeah, I don't care if they're a day away or they're 3 years away. The point is, they have this there. We have the chance to take it out. Why wouldn't we take that? Again, let's listen in.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I think that question being asked in the media, that's an irrelevant question. They have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not
I know
been
that better
made.
than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons. Because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question. That's a question of intent. And you know, in the intelligence assessment, that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage. I'm talking about the public March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also an inaccurate representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%? Right. If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon. Right. Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the delivery mechanisms. They have the enrichment capability. They have the highly enriched uranium that is stored. Yes. That's all we need to see.
Right. Well,
especially in the hands of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around. They are the source of all
yes, and no one's disputing. No one's disputing that. I'm not doing that here. And they were censured at the IAEA for that enrichment and for violating their non-proliferation agreements. I was simply asking if we had intelligence that there was an order to weaponize, because you said weaponization ambitions.
Well, we have intelligence that they have everything they need to build a nuclear weapon, and that's more than enough.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so he kind of put her in her place to a certain extent. Now, I'm not disputing she has every right to ask these questions. Go for it, right? But it's clear that there's a bias there, and the Democrats are searching for some line of attack. So the first being, well, maybe there weren't any weapons there. The second being, well, he should be impeached because he went ahead with this strike without consulting us first, right? We want to be included. We're all the party of inclusivity. And that didn't work. And so now the third talking point is, well, they didn't get anything. Right? That's what we're hearing. And that was the report out late last night. And this is what CNN is putting forward. And boy, oh boy, the president sure doesn't like that, nor does Marco Rubio, nor does Pete Hegseth, nor does Caroline Leavitt, who has suggested that they're really trying to dump all over the bombers that got all this stuff. So I'm going to get to that story in a second. I want to just quickly point out that before we do, I mean, you think about, okay, Intel community, allegedly leaking a report to CNN in the media, suggesting that nothing got accomplished there, that really, that maybe only set back by a few weeks. If that were the case, I just want to tell you, the markets would be in a way different position. We're looking at about a 0.4% decline in the Dow. You're looking at the S&P totally flat, and you're looking at the NASDAQ higher. Okay, so that's a big deal, guys. You'd also see oil positively soaring. Don't forget, it was down 8%, then it was down 5%. It's only up about 1.4% right now. So I think that's important to keep in mind, because as we try to digest all of this, and you have one Intel lone, sort of dissenter over here, actually it may have been 7 people in the community that spoke to CNN. They have one version of things. The Israelis have another version of things, which they have communicated to Donald Trump, and the administration has a definite viewpoint on things, which is one that this was the right call, because we actually are saving ourselves in the world at this particular time. So what do you think? How do you know what to think? One of the best ways to look at all of this is to go right back to the market. And the market clearly thinks that we have dissipated this threat for the near term. Investors are looking 6 months to a year out, right? So they are thinking good things ahead, good things ahead. And that is an important thing to keep in mind. 76 Research is my research company. Lots of great investing ideas. I encourage you to go there, because you know what? This market is on fire. I believe it's going to continue to be on fire as we see an economy that really resets under the Trump administration. I want you to be part of it. I want you to invest. Use code word dollar at 76 Research. Lots of specific companies, including our Father's Day pick. It's up like 23%. Since we picked it, and it's been continuing to skyrocket. So I want you to have this opportunity to get in on that. $1 a month for the first 2 months, then it resets to $9.95. You can swing it, okay? And if you don't like it, full money back guarantee, promise. We'll refund your dollar, okay? Anyway, American Hartford Gold is one of our sponsors here on the Trish Regan Show. We appreciate them for that. I encourage you to go look at gold if that's something you're interested in investing in. I told you I was buying it as it went down the last couple of days, which was a good call because it's back up today. What do you know? So American Hartford Gold, go take a look at that today, ladies and gentlemen. American Hartford Gold, text Trish to 65533, up to $15,000 in free silver for friends of the Trish Regan Show, and you can call them at 1-844-495-1115.